Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. We're here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Sorry to keep y'all waiting, but we had to do some things before we could get started. But right now, we're here to talk about the latest events going on in Gaza. I want to shout out everybody here who joined me on the channel, but especially channel members like Makeda, like Rachel, like Jazz, like Fate Look, like Hajra, like Crooklyn, Verena, Beyond Ebony, Rosability, Barzita Brujita, Albert Manuel, Odette, and Farris. Thank all y'all for coming through. Thank all y'all for the support. Every single person who supports the channel, I'm grateful for. We're going to get started right away with the Israel war on Gaza. And for those that don't know, shout out Karen D. When we talk about the war on Gaza, shout out Husna. The reason why we say the war on Gaza here is for a couple of reasons, but the most important thing, shout out to you, Nicole Davis. The most important thing here, shout out to you, BLK Brew. The most important thing here to understand as we talk about Israel's war on Gaza is that this is not a war of two nations. This is not a war of two equally yoked or positioned or empowered organizations or paramilitary forces or gangs or whatever you want to say. This is a war on the vulnerable. On October 7th, Hamas committed an act of violence, an act of gross violence. 1,139 people were killed. Hundreds of people, dozens if not hundreds, were kidnapped in Israel. I make no, and I'm only speaking for myself here, I make no bones about saying this was a war crime. I make no bones about saying this was a contravention of international law. I make no bones about saying I don't support the capturing of hostages and I don't support the killing of innocent people. That's my position. That is my moral position and my political position and my understanding of the law. What's happened since October 7th has been one of the most gross and disproportionate, violent, and indefensible acts that I've seen in modern history. That's not to say it's the worst, but it's up there. It ain't the most violent, but it's up there. I'm talking about in this young century. What we've seen has been almost inexplicably brutal and violent. Since October 7th, after those 1,139 people were killed in Israel, we've seen a full onslaught on the Palestinian people. Not a war on Hamas, not a war on militants, not a war on terrorism, not all the things that they say it is. No, we have seen a war on the Palestinian people. We have seen mass destruction. And I want to give you that context. As of right now, today, more than, in fact, I'll give you the exact number, 32,226 Palestinians have been killed. 32,226 Palestinians have been killed. Another 74,518 have been wounded. These are the real numbers. 74,518 wounded, 32,226 killed. And again, 1,139 people killed on October 7th. Now, we don't assess our justice claims. We don't adjudicate our moral debates based on how many people died. In other words, it's not that Israel's wrong because more people died in Palestine. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is Israel's choices to bomb residential areas, to strike hospitals and masajid, mosques, schools, churches, cultural sites. The fact that they have taken spaces that have been designated as unassailable, safe zones, again, mosques, for example, hospitals like Al-Shifa, and they've treated them as military targets without offering a shred of evidence in defense of this. They have used starvation as a weapon of war. They've used dehydration and malnutrition as a weapon of war. They have blocked aid trucks. They have destroyed the educational system. They have destroyed the wells. Over 112 wells have been destroyed. And then you wonder why people have malnutrition. They have told people that there are safe doors and humanitarian corridors, and then they have denied people access to those very things. This is the reality. This is what's happening. So anybody that points you to October 7th as the reason for what's happening, they're on the wrong moral framework. They're operating from the wrong ethical position. They're also operating from the wrong legal posture. It's not legal to do this. It's not legal to do this. It's not legal to do this. And where we stand now, things are not improving. Today, as we talk about updates, Israeli warplanes have carried out strikes on Khan Yunis with explosions and gunfire reported near the Nasser medical complex in southern Gaza City. Again, we're talking hospitals here in southern Gaza City, Nasser Hospital. This isn't the first time we've seen Nasser Hospital hit. About a month ago, we saw extraordinary amounts of violence in the whole complex, particularly in the front. People couldn't get in, people couldn't get out. Sick people couldn't get into the hospital. Well, people couldn't get out to make room for new sick people. The most basic of medical services could not have been provided. These airstrikes that I'm talking about on Khan Yunis, near the hospital, at least 14 Palestinians have been killed. At least 14 Palestinians. I'm sorry. I'm not being clear. I'm not being accurate, actually. Let me be more honest about that. Okay, so there's two different lines here. I just conflated two things. The warplanes carried out strikes on Khan Yunis. There have been explosions and gunfire near Nasser Medical Center. In addition, at least 14 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes overnight. The airstrikes were on Rafah and on Deir el-Balah. Rafah and Deir el-Balah are toward the south. They're south of Nasser Medical Hospital. They're south of Khan Yunis. Okay, both of those things are true. I just didn't want you to think that the deaths happen in Khan Yunis. The deaths happen in Rafah and Deir el-Balah. Mediation efforts to end the war on Gaza are stalling. People were saying that they were hopeful. I mean, how long ago was it that President Joseph Biden here in the United States was holding an ice cream cone and telling us that he was optimistic for a ceasefire by Monday or over the weekend? That was weeks ago. And what we've heard, what I've heard through Al Jazeera, is that a Hamas official said that Israeli negotiators have rejected the latest ceasefire proposal. And this is something that we see over and over again. Israel and the United States offer ceasefires that aren't really ceasefires, that are really just momentary pauses that allow Israel to get its hostages back and then clear the way for a full-fledged raising of every construction, every building, every artifact, everything. The destruction of all the people in Gaza. In other words, the only thing stopping Israel from being even more brutal in its assault on Gaza is the fact that they want to protect their own citizens and their own hostages and their own kidnapped people, including foreign nationals and other things. Once that happens, what reason does Israel have to not strike Gaza even harder? And let's be honest. Let's be clear, rather. Benjamin Netanyahu plans to invade Rafah. He intends to destroy Rafah, and he hasn't been shy about that. We gotta be honest about that. The humanitarian ceasefire is urgent. It's necessary, and it's an argument made. It's not just made by Hamas. It's not just made by the Sultan. It's not just made by the PA. It's not just made by peaceniks, right? The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he himself had recently said, "Hey, any further onslaught will make things even worse." This is a quote. Any further onslaught will make things even worse. Worse for Palestinian civilians, worse for hostages, it's an important point, and worse for all people in the region. He said the starvation that's happening inside the Gaza Strip is a, quote, moral outrage. We'll talk about that in a moment. But so you have the UN saying this. You have, honestly, you have Antony Blinken saying this. You have the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, saying that here in the United States. You have Germany saying this. Now, there's multiple things happening. Some people are critiquing the lack of a ceasefire. Other people are critiquing the planned, not proposed, the proposed, the planned, and the promised ground invasion in Rafah. When you have people like Netanyahu who are saying it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. At the same time that you have an international community saying there can't be a ground invasion in Rafah, especially with 1.5 million people there, and not expect a humanitarian disaster, a humanitarian crisis. This is what he's saying. What do you do? Well, if you're Netanyahu, what makes sense to do is to stop. Listen. But he's saying we're going to go. He said he announced 2 days ago that he's going to go ahead. Israel plans to continue with the ground invasion, even without U.S. support. Now he wants U.S. support, which is why Stephanie Marquez's point/question here is so important. She said, "What do you make of Netanyahu reportedly coming to speak to Congress? Do you think it'll happen?" Yeah, I do think it'll happen. I think he's going to come speak to Congress. I think the Republicans are going to be behind him. I think the Democrats are going to be weak. And I think it's a 50-50 chance, in my estimation, that he will even acknowledge President Biden. Because Netanyahu has come here before and ignored the president, as we saw under Obama. And Biden and Obama, for him, are politically almost inseparable. So we'll see how this plays out. But I would be shocked if Netanyahu didn't come here and he didn't try to make the case. He's not making the case to the U.S. Congress. He doesn't actually give a damn about them. He's making a broader appeal to the global community and also to American Jews, right? Because Netanyahu's in political trouble. He's unpopular. I don't know if there's ever been. In fact, I know that there has not been an Israeli prime minister as unpopular as Netanyahu. So we're in a tough spot here because Netanyahu was fighting for his life, and his political life, his commitment to staying out of prison hinges on him being prime minister. But the only way he can stay a prime minister as a practical matter is if he's a wartime prime minister, which means what? He has to stay in a state of perpetual war, and that is not good for anybody. A Chinese-owned oil tanker was attacked off Yemen on Saturday by ballistic missiles fired by Yemen's Houthi rebels, who have intensified strikes on Red Sea shipping. The Houthis, of course, are demanding that Israel end the war on Gaza. Houthis have been down by law. They've said, look, we as nations have a responsibility not just to not commit genocide, but to prevent the performance of genocide or the act of genocide by other nation states. And they said, basically, we are enabling this by allowing the kind of trade, the type of commercial action that's happening in the Red Sea. And so they've had a blockade in the Red Sea for months now. And that's made them a target of the U.S. It's made them a target of the UK. It's made them a target of every country whose tankers and boats and other stuff get blocked. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on that front. I talked about a bombing of a house in Deir el-Belah that killed at least 9 Palestinians. Israel has informed the UN that it will no longer approve UNRWA food convoys to northern Gaza. And now you have to understand, 70% of the people in Gaza are facing intense food scarcity, not just food insecurity, but food scarcity. They're on the verge of starvation. And Israel saying, yeah, you're going to starve, but we're still not letting UNRWA bring the food in. There's no good reason for that, but that's what they're doing. The Palestinian Red Crescent says smoke bombs launched at the hospital are going to force staff, the wounded people, and displaced individuals to evacuate. So once again, hospitals are supposed to be safe zones. They're supposed to be protective spaces, and instead, they are spaces where people cannot get healed, they cannot get made whole, but now they're also being harassed and targeted, maybe even killed there. So this is the latest of what's going on in Gaza. There's a few other things. The Israeli army continues to operate in the vicinity of Al-Shifa Hospital in central Gaza to deadly effect, with Hamas fighters also claiming hits on Israeli soldiers and tanks in the area. The presence of the Israeli army has been a provocation for some. It's been all the things. The Israeli military also laid siege to Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis, killing several and surrounding it with tanks, forcing people to evacuate. So we talk about Nasser Hospital, we talk about Shifa Hospital, we talk about the Red Crescent, we can talk about Al Amal. You know, the hospitals are being destroyed. The access to medical care is being reduced exponentially. And we're seeing a situation where Palestinians, and particularly Palestinians in Gaza, will simply not have an opportunity to grow up, to grow old, to grow healthy. Shout out to Nikki Rose for joining the channel. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. You don't know how much I appreciate seeing that. All right, family. That's it for tonight. We'll come back with more. I'll do some office hours in about 15 minutes if y'all are open to a live question and answer session. But for tonight, all I ask is that everybody who's on here, hit the like button. Again, there's hundreds of people on here. Just hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button so you can get updates regularly about what we're doing. And of course, I ask if you can, if you're so inclined, hit the join button. Become a member of the MLH official YouTube channel. We do a lot of dope stuff here. Can someone send, someone asked the question, Douglas Mitchell asked the question, how do I become an MLH member? Can someone send the link there to make that happen so that we can have yet another MLH family member here? Do that, and that makes you a monthly subscriber to the channel. And of course, if you're so inclined, you can also make a direct cash donation through Cash App. It allows us to build content. It allows us to create content. It allows us to run the Night School show, the Mumia podcast, all the stuff that's happening. We do with your financial support. So if you could go to Cash App there, MLHTV, that's $ MLHTV. No amount is too small, but if everybody who's watching right now, just the people watching right now gave $3, just if everybody watching right now gave $3, we would have enough money for our editor, for our producer. We'd have enough money to put out new content. We'd have enough money to adjust the lighting in the studio, the temporary studio, and also put a little bit down toward the permanent studio that we're going to build or create or buy. I say all that to say we love the support. We can use it. And if everybody gives a little, nobody has to give a lot. I want to thank y'all for watching. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. I'm grateful for y'all. Keep watching this show. Make sure you watch Night School every weeknight from Monday to Thursday at 10:30. I'm going to do not just the Gaza update. I'm going to give you an update of some of the most important stories trending in the world, and we're going to do it to death, man. I'm so excited about the upcoming season. So excited to share with you all, and so honored to be in the trenches with you all as we fight and struggle for freedom, y'all. So let's keep doing it. I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.